what skills and resources and techniques do you have at your disposal to confront something that's extremely uncomfortable? Because we can never get away from, the inevitable discomfort of things that will show up. So.
And you teach in school, shouldn't they?
Well, yeah, that would be amazing. There's a lot of things they should teach in schools, to be honest, that they don't. But before we get into it, we always like to know a little bit about you and how you got to this point. So a bit of an introduction about Jamie.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess my journey, it's all one long journey, but started when I was 15. So I started having some challenges with my mental health when I was 15. Depression, and then that kind of transmuted and transformed into anxiety and then panic attacks in my early 20s. And I didn't really at the time, I always, as we all do, hindsight's a wonderful thing, kind of wish I knew what I know now back then, because it was just happening, and I was like, oh well, life sucks, like that's just kind of life. And then in my early 20s things started getting quite significantly worse in terms of the panic attacks becoming more frequent, more debilitating, more just knocking me off my centre. And I was still relatively high functioning. I had a corporate job, I was still playing rugby at that time, and I was still able to do all of those things, but under the surface, I think I've always been pretty proficient at wearing a together mask. But under the surface, things were just spiralling. And it was through that I then got to a point where I sort of knew but didn't want to ask for help. I was very much from that kind of very traditionally masculine side of things, emotionally, I wouldn't say stunted, but repressed. And, I played a huge amount of rugby for a number of years, and there's a lot of good that comes from that and that I still see playing out in my life. But it's a very good example of the masculine culture, for better and for worse. And through that time, I knew I needed help, but I found it so challenging to ask for it. And it was actually my mum. Shout out to my mum, who really liked the mums, who said, do you want me to find a therapist for you? And I was like, whatever, do whatever you want. I don't care.
And what did it look like at that time, the panic attacks and the anxiety? Was it?
Mostly, the ones that stick with me the most clearly were the ones I was having at work. And that would be like this overwhelming wave of visceral kind of tingling and numbness in the body. And then my breath starts to go. And then I'd make my way swiftly to the bathroom and kind of sit in there and be in tears and be very, like almost shaking. And very much, and kind of ironically but unsurprisingly with kind of what came next, this complete lack of capacity to breathe with any level of control. And so I started down a very traditional path, I think, of what was available at that point in time with mental health, which was therapy, talking therapy, CBT, and then ticking off that list of, have you tried running? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried meditation? I did all of those things, and I still do a lot of those things because there's a reason that they're on that list. Cold therapy wasn't there at the time. It wasn't quite there. I interestingly, I did a lot of ice baths playing rugby, but always through the lens of recovery. Always through the lens of recovery, and never really anything other than that.
And with that, was there a kind of, I can stay in for 5 minutes? Was there a little bit of that?
I think it wouldn't be ice bath culture if there wasn't.
No,
so,
I'm going to pull away from that.
I have much more to say on that in kind of the now. And then I found my way to breathwork very much by accident. I think I was on this journey from completely closed to much more open, and that I can continue to go on. But I rejected the idea of, kind of rolled my eyes at the idea of breathwork. I was like, not convinced. What even is it? And at that point in time, breathwork was nowhere close to what it is now. This is about 6-7 years ago. And eventually, kind of said, I'll give it a go. What have I got to lose? And that really was the beginning of what led me to where I am now. And it was breathwork as part of that holistic picture. It'd make a much sexier marketing message if it was just breathwork and it was the first session, but it wasn't. And it was the holistic picture, but I think because of the anxiety and the panic and breath being such a central part of that experience, it makes total sense to me that learning about my breath, learning how to breathe day to day, but also how to use it in those moments became the thing. It became kind of the key that unlocked the rest of it for me. And then it's kind of just gone from there. I started the breath space about 5 years ago, built it through lockdown and COVID alongside a full-time job, and then left my last full-time job in 2021 to go all in. And life looks very, very different now.
Your clients, do you do one-on-one or do you do group sessions, or is it sort of a combination? Is it all in person? Is some online?
It's a real range, yeah. So I guess over the years the business has kind of grown and evolved. I do a kind of very small select amount of one-to-one work, and that is typically focused on functional breathing and nervous system regulation. You know, it kind of just mirrors the challenges that people are facing. So I work mainly with people who are experiencing anxiety, burnout, insomnia, these symptoms of nervous system dysregulation, and supporting them through that with breath kind of as the forefront, but also we talk about everything else that kind of lies underneath. I very much kind of think of breath as the gateway into self-awareness, into kind of just this deeper understanding of ourselves. And then within that, there are kind of in-person workshops and retreats that I run that are more geared towards the deeper end of the spectrum. So if I'm working one-to-one with someone, it tends to be those first two pieces, but my in-person work in groups and on the retreats is very much more of the deeper dive into healing, into these transformational experiences. And the word retreat always conjures up, I think, kind of it means a lot of different things to different people, but I think it always conjures up quite a relaxing experience. And I'm very
went a week away from my kids.
very I'm very clear to let people know that it's not a particularly relaxing experience. It's very much like a therapeutic
there's processing,
deep dive processing. Like we're working with trauma, we're working with the subconscious, we're working with
and does that come out
big time?
So
big time.
Things that people maybe were not aware of that they've left in their childhood.
Exactly.
Kind of...
And childhood's the obvious one, but I think just in terms of a very simplistic overview of the mechanism at play when we do these deeper styles of breath work, we are quietening these sort of protector parts of the brain and that the monkey mind, and the subconscious becomes more active. And so it's really this kind of this opening experience, this opportunity for stuff to come up. And that can take many different forms. I had experiences early on in my journey with breathwork that were euphoric and blissful. I had others that were like deep grief and pain, and it's I often think of sort of my experiences with depression and my mental health as like this very numb section of my emotional experience, and breathwork as part of that bigger puzzle really opened that window in terms of the high highs but also the low lows, and in the retreats that's very much in a group container what we're looking to do is actually people will show up with lots of different intentions, lots of different reasons.
And I suppose it's being, like you said, it's being able to deal with those situations with people that potentially are showing a huge amount of trauma. And how do you deal with that from a psychological point of view as well as a physiological point of view?
Absolutely. And it's really about both equipping yourself and equipping them with the support, but also the resources to handle that, because the reason that we haven't addressed it previously is because we didn't feel equipped or like we had the skills to do that. Whether that was a conscious decision to go, I'm going to put that in a box, I'm not going to go there, or an unconscious thing because the load of that trauma was just too much to bear, and so it just gets locked away. And so if we're making a conscious choice to go and explore and maybe look at some of those things, do we now actually have the resources to handle that? And so it's about, this is where it all links together with the breath of the nervous system regulation piece. How do you regulate yourself in the face of something that's deeply uncomfortable. And that then transfers, and again, this is why I love this work, because that then transfers into life. You know, what skills and resources and techniques do you have at your disposal to confront something that's extremely uncomfortable? Because we can never get away from, you know, the inevitable discomfort of things that will show up. So.
They should teach it in schools, shouldn't they?
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing.
Because
there's a lot of things they should teach in schools, to be honest, that they don't.
But, I mean, the amount of anxiety that teenagers have now with social media,
Pressure.
the pressure's just insane. I mean, like I say, I've got an 18-year-old daughter, and the struggles that they face are very different to when we were 18. So actually, I think it should be
100%.
introduced.
And I think this is, you know, we talked a bit there about the depths that we can go to and sort of the very deep end of the breathwork spectrum, but also this is where the simplicity of it does come into its own, because for young children, you know, I have friends who have, you know, 3-year-olds, and they're already talking to them about, okay, should we take a deep breath? And if you can get a 3-year-old, they absorb it all. And, you know, the earlier we can start embedding these ideas of just, you know, I got to 24 having never given a second thought to a breath that I took. And had I known at the age of 10 that if I slow my breath down and make my exhale longer than my inhale, I'll feel more calm, that to me feels, it's like you think about changing a ship's course by 0.5%. It's that, and then you end up in completely different points 10 years, 20 years down the line.
I'm so glad you said that, because I do that with my 8-year-old. And I feel like, if you can give them a little toolbox, which is what you said earlier, but not just for them, for everybody, it's then you can go to that in that point of difficulty, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whatever it is, however big or small, it's just part of the toolbox that you can
100%.
to cope with for that central nervous system.
And it's really interesting. I've sat in quite a lot of spaces where people are working with plant medicine and psychedelics, and I'll often speak to them in the days leading up to that about how you can use your breath if things get a little bit hairy and uncomfortable. And it's so interesting to see or speak to people afterwards, because, you know, when you're working with some of these medicines and compounds, like, you're not really there. Like, you're there in a different capacity, but you're not super conscious of what's going on. And yet 90% plus people come out and they go, you know, when things got interesting in there, I remembered my breath. I actually and it's weird to link psychedelics to children, but it's the same sort of thing in the sense of planting the seed. Planting the seed, and when the seed is planted, and this is, you know, I'm annoying in one sense and not in another sense, because so often I'll sit and have a conversation like this and someone will be like, oh, I'm now really suddenly aware of my breath. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're welcome. In the same vein, like, if I can annoy people gently into becoming aware of their breath, they'll be in a situation in 2 years where they're having a panic attack or they're super, super anxious, and they'll remember it. And they'll go from having no understanding, no access to that skill, that kind of superpower, to then having it. And the stuff with kids, I think, is so amazing, because it is, the earlier we can start, the better. And also getting that across to parents as well, because, you know, as I'm sure we'll all know in our own individual ways, like, if you as a parent are dysregulated and stressed and overwhelmed, your child is going to project and, like, mirror that right back at you. And so, yes, teach your kids, but also take responsibility for our own state, so that you know, this co-regulation of nervous systems, this constant kind of dialogue between them. You know, a calm parent will receive a calm child, and as parents, you know, that's one of the main responsibilities that we can take is actually managing our own state, to support the development of your own child's nervous system and their state. So.
Because you do feel it from people. I will often say this to you sometimes when you
meet a lot of people.
You sometimes maybe first meet somebody, or you go into a room with people, and I will sometimes say, oh, my central nervous system doesn't like that. Like, you can almost feel the anxiety or whatever it is.
Sometimes people are nervous when they come on the podcast.
But
we can feel it.
Yeah, you almost can feel, and it's such a weird, I don't know how to explain it. It's not my like spidey sense.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's a feeling that I get right here. And I think that's like, yeah, with kids, I suppose, and I suppose with children as well, like we're born nose breathers, but we develop as mouth breathers. And why is that? And why is it important to try and go back? Obviously there's tons on social media about mouth taping and everything. Why does that happen? Why are we born with this perfect breathing and then we mess it up?
I could go on a massive rant that I won't go on about like just society, systems, capitalism. Like it does get that kind of broad when we really get into it, but at the core there's kind of a few key reasons why in what we see in the modern age, which is sort of air quality and air pollution, food quality and nutrition, and stress and anxiety. So if we take those in order, you know, air quality, air pollution, allergies, you know, there's not many people kind of in indigenous cultures who have a gluten intolerance. There's not many people who have hay fever. And, you know, you've got to look at why, you know, these things are just, it's not a coincidence that modern society is breeding modern illnesses and modern impact. Obviously there are allergies that will be, you know, genetic in certain senses, but from what we see in terms of nasal congestion and things like that, we will then switch to mouth breathing and then it becomes habituated. Nutrition is a big one in terms of solid foods and whole foods. If we are chewing, if we are using our jaw properly, we will get better formation of mouth and skull and will be more likely to breathe through the nose. And then the stress piece, I think, is probably the most ubiquitous one across most people, which is if you are in this state of overwhelm and stress and nervous system dysregulation, you're going to naturally be more prone to breathe quickly, to feel like you need to breathe more. And the mouth being a bigger vessel will take you into that kind of over-breathing, hyperventilation syndrome state where you're almost panting. So there are a number of different reasons why. But the benefits, you know, we're now seeing this huge, as you alluded to, kind of conversation around the importance of nasal breathing, mouth taping, you know, all of this fun stuff that causes lots of conversation on social media. So,
but I mean, if it's I mean, some of it is the conversation is a bit unusual, but actually, you think if it's starting people actually the consciousness to how am I breathing, then that has to be a good thing with all the other random news articles that are thrown in there. At least people are thinking about it.
Well, this is it. I think, again, breath is a fantastic gateway drug in a lot of ways into just health and wellness because, you know, my mum, she won't mind me saying, she's getting another shout out, but she did, of her own accord, one of my online courses, my kind of entry-level online course about breathwork. And she enjoyed it, she got lots from it. And about 6 months, I say, after that, I just get a message from her being like, just started doing cold showers. I've never said anything to her about benefits of cold showers. You know, she's probably heard me talking about it through other forms indirectly, but that to me was such a wake-up moment of, I've not forced anything in any direction other than she knows what I do and how much it's helped me. And so when people come to this stuff in their own time and breath can, because it's so accessible, be that thing, it's then like, oh, I've started going down the breath rabbit hole and now I'm in the cold shower rabbit hole and now I'm buying an ice bath and now I'm, you know, I've just got her first pair of Vivo barefoot shoes and she's wearing barefoot shoes and all of these subtle things. That again, it's the ship changing course ever so slightly. It just opens a door that it's kind of a nice health and wellness Pandora's box. It's like once you look in, you can't unsee it, and you almost have to take. And I wish everybody kind of had this. Like, it forces you to take personal responsibility, and personal responsibility is so powerful, and it's a never-ending process because once you start, you can't stop because you know that it's good for you. So I love breath from that perspective because, you know, I could get my grandma to do it, I can get my, you know, get a 3-year-old to do it and everyone in between. And there's something in it for everybody as well.
So you've touched on cold therapy there.
Yes.
Which is what we're here to talk about. So what kind of cold therapy do you do?
I'm typically a plunger more than anything. I would say massively cyclical in my use of them. Again, sort of similar to what I was saying with my breathwork practice, through the lens of what do I need? What does my nervous system need? What am I looking to achieve? I've never really been a ice bath a day kind of person, because that to me, for me, doesn't take into account enough of that tailored, bespoke, like understanding through the nervous system lens. Do I need this? Is this going to make me feel good? Is this going to be a bit much for me? Am I already quite stimulated? Do I need more of that? But yeah, ice baths have always been kind of my go-to from that perspective. I do love, I love the feeling. I love the mental space that it creates for me. I love that kind of post-ice feeling as well, when I get it right.
But I think that's really important what you say about it being cyclical and being, because I think we've had conversations with Brass Monkey about it very much is dominated on social media at the moment about I've done 3.5 minutes at 2 degrees, and it's almost competition, whether it's competition with somebody else or it's competition with yourself, but it very much shouldn't be like that. It should be a much more intuitive practice that I think even we thought when we first got the bath, we'll do it every day. But actually we found we don't do it every day, because some days you don't feel like you need to do it, and other days you feel like you really need to do it. And I think it's that, like you said, it's the self-awareness piece that is super important when doing cold therapy.
100%. It's my biggest kind of narrative and mission with cold therapy and its links to breathwork. It's exactly that. It's helping people go through what I think is a very normal, natural human nature thing, which is, and again, tied to social media, I've been told that this is good for me. If something's good for me, I'm going to do it every day, because then I'm doing something that's good for me every single day. And that's as far as a lot of people go, because we externalize that a lot of the time. We don't go, oh, did that actually feel good? My kind of most frequent, I guess, use of cold is 2.5 minutes at 6 degrees. And that tends to do the job for me. I might go a little bit longer if I've got a different kind of goal in mind, but of a morning where I want to use it and I feel like I want that nice kind of energy, that nice mood boosting aspect, 2.5 minutes at 6 degrees is where I'm at. I've done my, how long can I stay in for? But for me, the ego side.
I think everybody does that. Just to begin with, I think everybody does. But then then you learn, don't you?
And I think it's just about dosage. It's about understanding and this is the education piece. It's like, why am I doing it? What's my current state? What am I hoping to achieve? And from what I know, what should I be doing to achieve that? And that's not simple. And also, I think the kind of disciplined crew getting on this one, and they're like, no, you're just making excuses, like if you're resisting, and it's actually like, there will be times where that's true. There'll be times where actually, from a nervous system perspective, a health perspective, a psychological perspective, it would probably be really good for me to do, and I wimp out because I am getting that resistance, that natural resistance to the stressor. And there'll be other times where it's very much a gut feel of, I don't need this today. And I'm actually, my ego's trying to get me in. Sometimes the ego's trying to get me out, and sometimes the ego's trying to get me in, because I should do it, because I need a kick up the arse, whatever it might be. When in actual fact, it needs to be that. It's like really tuning in to this, like, is this my ego telling me either to get in or to not get in? Or is this a very like intuitive feeling of like gut going, this is what I need right now. And it really ties in very similar to breathwork around an understanding of where you're at in terms of your level of activation, your level of kind of nervous system arousal. It's like, do I need a bit of a push? Do I need a bit of fire? Or do I actually need to come down? And that's where maybe the ice isn't the right thing in that moment, where you're already, a bit overstimulated, a bit anxious, a bit stressed. And it all stems back to kind of what I talk about in terms of like nervous system literacy is like a real internal clock of where I'm at right now, and as a result, what do I need as a practice, as a tool, as a modality.
And it's been intuitive. You see, if I feel stressed, and you felt a little stressed yesterday,
I did,
and as soon as you got in, it worked for you. And I think if I've felt some stress or some upset, I've got in and I definitely felt better. But then there have been days where my body has just said, not today.
I find like if I've sort of actually overdone it physically, sometimes it's not the place for me. But I find if I've overdone it mentally, it is the place for me. And yesterday I was very hectic, and it brought me back down.
Quite quickly.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because even the language itself can be a bit limiting, because we go, okay, I might say as a practitioner with a focus on the nervous system, if you're highly stressed within your nervous system, not a good idea to add more stress through the ice. But there will be forms of stress, as we've kind of all spoken to, where actually the benefit of that mental clarity is what you need. And so this is where it's, very easy to sit here and say, do it like this and not like this, but actually it's completely about understanding yourself and understanding what you need, and there's no one size fits all. There never is with any of this stuff. So that feel, and I guess to what I was saying earlier, that there are days where I get that wrong, and that's all part of it. Like I'll be like, I think this is going to be a good thing, and I get out and I'm like, I feel rubbish. I feel like wiped because I've just done that. And that's how you learn, right? It's the finger on the hob. Like you only learn by putting your finger on the hob. And so I know next time, and I've learned a huge amount about myself through this as well, which is, I have a period of a couple of months where I don't do it at all because I'm a bit under the weather, or I'm just a bit burnt out, or whatever it might be. And then times where I'm like, I feel really well resourced. I actually feel like I can take this on, and my nervous system isn't gonna hate me for it. And I say that like through a period at the moment where I haven't been in for a while, and I'm somewhat dreading getting in that side because I'm out of practice, but all part of it.
So specifically with cold water immersion, what kind of breathwork practice would you recommend to sort of either elevate or deal with that
for sure
shock and stress that you
so I'm very much of the school of thought of, if we're facing a stressor, an acute stressor, which the cold is, there's no kind of getting away from that as a fact, then I'm going to be using my breath and whatever tools to balance the scales. So I want to be approaching that experience from a balanced, calm, regulated place. With the ice, you're always going to get this pre-anticipation. I'm already getting it, right? Like heart rate increases, breathing rate increases, your mind starts to tick. That's where the resistance can show up, all of this stuff. And so I want to work against that, because one of my favorite things about the cold is it is the internal narrative. It is psychological resilience about getting in and managing my state through managing my breath in the face of a stressor, because that is what then transfers into the stresses that show up outside of that setting. So what does that actually look like? I typically, I imagine as we start getting ready, I'll just naturally start to slow my breath down. So that could look like a specific technique, maybe in through the nose, slowly out of the mouth, extending the exhale. Some people might like something with a little hold, like box breathing, because that just helps to really punctuate any over breathing that you might fall into, any rapid breathing that you might fall into. And we're just really looking to kind of take the edge off of that initial, like, okay, this is going to happen piece. Then when I that's, I guess, then stepping up to the reality of getting in, I'll usually do like 1 to 5 bigger clearing breaths. Nothing too rapid, but more of like a just like almost, that's more of an emotional kind of psyching up thing. 1 to 5 of those, and then I'd take a big breath in through the nose, and as we already spoke about before we came on air, I lower down on an exhale. That exhale is that parasympathetic rest and digest response in a nutshell. So that's how we calm ourselves as we lower down, but also get control of the breath, avoid the very natural, very innate gasp reflex that shows up. Like that is almost unavoidable, especially if you're new to getting into cold. Like you will go there, whether it's like, or whether it's, and you just completely come up into here. And interestingly, everybody, I've had people who I look at them and they're stood there, big guys, tattoos, and I'm like, this can't be fun. And he gets in and it's just so individualized in terms of the physiology. And so I'd repeat that breath, that kind of getting in breath, for as long as I felt I needed to. So in through the nose, slowly out of the mouth, really tasking myself with the job of how slowly can I breathe for as long as I need to. Usually I'd probably say that's maybe 30 seconds to a minute, breathing like that. And then once I feel like I've got control of my breath, I might come back to the nose. And almost not let go of control of the breath. I'd always stay with kind of as slow, as steady as I can, but not be so focused on it, because I think that's where my mind can then start to either clear or get sharper or whatever it needs to do. I guess the build up, very much just about a couple of techniques that you can use to really lower the heart rate and slow things down. Maybe a couple of like psych up breaths before getting in, and then entering on that exhale and staying with that kind of slow exhale for as long as you can, and then maybe coming back to the nose as well. But that is
and then on afterwards, is there anything we should be thinking about after?
You can. I'd say this is where we start to get into the realm of the conversation around Wim and the Wim Hof method, which is like, that is where
Are you going to start dancing around my God?
Yeah, I mean, the horse dance might come out. No, I don't. I'm not averse to kind of like a bit of a shakeout, like just to warm the body back up. Maybe some bigger breaths just to kind of physically get a bit of warmth in. But sometimes I like the stillness, and actually I'm going, I can feel everything. But from a breath perspective, there's nothing kind of obvious that we go, okay, we need to breathe like this afterwards, because we've got ourselves through it, and actually there's probably a good amount of relief of getting out sometimes.
Well, we see some quite interesting reactions, so because obviously we witness lots of different people getting in and out, and some will be that very still. You can see they're kind of thinking, how do I feel? How am I? I'm cold. It's very physical. Other people, like yesterday, the guest that got out, she was like, and it was that a bit of excitement, a bit of relief. You can see it on the face. So as long as you just kind of embrace that feeling when you get out.
I think being aware of like the obvious, I guess, like health aspects in terms of like shivering and like warming yourself back up. Typically, as I'm sure you guys will be well versed in, kind of we want to allow the body to warm up naturally, unless we're doing contrast stuff. But always ending on the cold, even if you are doing contrast. And I think that's maybe, I guess, an important point around in the ice and shivering, which is typically we would give people one chance or maybe two chances to control their shiver response. So if someone's shivering, I go, okay, either through your breath or through your mind, can you actually manage that shiver response and come back to stillness? If they go, cool, I'm there, fine. If someone can't control their shiver response, then I'd get them up pretty much straight away. Because it's just that like state management in the face of what they're confronted
That's
with.
what we always say. I mean, we're not professionals, but we always say as soon as the shiver comes, if it's there, it's time, even really before the shiver comes is a good point to get out, to be super safe, right?
100%.
So.
Are you ready?
No.
Take a breath.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll start my breathing now, I think.
I always like it when the sun is out because it's like another sensation. You feel the warmth on you, and I don't know if it's almost tricks your brain to think that you're not going to be cold, but it's that feeling.
It's nice as well to have like sometimes a bit of the healthy peer pressure. Like today I probably wouldn't have got in of my own accord, even if it would have been a good thing for me. I think I would have been like, I've got other stuff to do. maybe it's not the right day. And kind of that ego trying to take me out of it. It's cold though.
But the ego has very much brought you into it because we've just done it and
yeah,
now you have to do
I've got to do it. I look so good, like bright red as well.
No, that's good. It's amazing you can see. Oh, we didn't bring your... Let's...
Thank you.
How was it?
You know what? It was hard.
Yeah.
I think the breath is such a good window right into like, how am I going to handle this today? And I found like the first few, like, as people will have seen or heard, like, I actually sometimes clearly didn't realize, but when it's hard to like catch your breath and like really get that slow breathing, a couple of like, and then go, actually really helped. And it probably took me longer than I was expecting it to really settle into it. But then, as we'll all know, you kind of hit that point where you do go, okay, like I'm here now. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Intrigued, always super curious as the shivers start to come a little bit.
We've got them.
Super curious to like see in about 5-10 minutes where I'm at. Like, is it the energy? Is it the mood? Is it? It feels like it's going to be, because I'm feeling a little bit of that already. But also, you know, where am I later? Will I feel a little bit tireder? Will I feel a bit more wiped? Will I feel a bit more focused? And I think that's the learning and kind of the knowledge that we gain from it, which is, but no, really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.